Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have X-Men. This is the classic 24 years old movie from 20th Century Fox, well before Disney bought them. I'll talk about that in a minute. This is an hour and 45 minutes long, which is really short for a superhero film, but this is sort of kind of unique in the sense that it was paving the way for a whole new era in superhero films. I hate to call it genre. There's always the debate whether it's its own genre or it's a type of film that can fit into a number of genres, as Marvel Studios has proven over the years. But in this 2000 film, which, again, I still have the DVD. Yes, it says fingerprints all over it. Yes, this is what a DVD looks like, just so you know, for those of you who are not aware. I've been a fan since the 80s, when I started reading X-Men comics, thanks to the Secret Wars 2 crossover. Yeah, so that's one good thing that came out of that series. Anyway, this film, even though, yes, we can all agree that Blade was a trailblazer in this genre, but it was not. It was a superhero film to a certain degree, but it was also horror, action, and so many others with charismatic Wesley Snipes at the center of it. Just, doing something completely different. These films are very much couched in the history, sort of a traditional history of, capes and spandex kind of situation, even though they all wear leather in this. The X-Men, for the longest time, if not for most of Marvel's history, even though there was a time that their sales were so poor, the series got essentially canceled and they did reprints for a while. X-Men, at a certain point, thanks to Giant Size X-Men, became the biggest, most popular series in comics, period, for the longest time. Sure, Batman is huge, Superman, big, historic, iconic, but X-Men, especially through the 80s and 90s, just was, part of the phrase, a juggernaut when it comes to comics. So the idea of, even after so many iterations in animation, and seeing other live-action renditions of popular characters like the Incredible Hulk or Spider-Man or Captain America, done for TV movies, not for the big screen, after so many years of seeing those do okay, but we're kind of, while we have a nostalgic corner of our heart for some of those, they weren't great. They weren't just great. The Hulk stands up a little bit. But I have a feeling that there's certain things, if I started going back and watching it now, maybe not. There's certain things that may not last. And of course, the X-Men, so many iterations have been done through animation. It was kind of a big deal to try to get this put into live action. At some point, and what could Marvel do? They were in bankruptcy for most of the 90s. They were literally just hanging on by a thread. So they sold off their biggest iconic properties. They sold Spider-Man and his cast of characters off to Sony. They sold the Fantastic Four, Ghost Rider, Daredevil, and of course the X-Men, all to 20th Century Fox. And they put a director, Bryan Singer, who has not stood the test of time, unfortunately. It's one of the more unfortunate aspects of this film that even though he's done a really good job with this, he understood the X-Men. Well, I won't go into too much about that. You can research it if you like. They had to throw a cast together that wouldn't be expensive. Yeah, you should have, you could have gone with big stars to really anchor this thing. And yeah, by the way, Sony was already working on a Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire that would come out in 2002, but X-Men was going to be first out of the gate, year 2000. I was excited for this. I had a license plate. I lived in Virginia at the time, and you could get custom plates there for pretty much nothing, but they had a Lockheed SR-71 jet. Yeah, I know. On the thing. So I got an X-Men 2000 on my license plate. I had that on my freaking car for years. And yeah, somebody out there, I sold it on eBay many years later. So somebody out there has those plates. If you're watching this, well, I'm the guy who sold it to you. I really should have kept them, but... And I think it was only one plate because it was, you didn't need to have two like in California. Either way, that's beside the point. I was a big fan, and I was excited for the X-Men film, and I watched this thing so many freaking times in the theaters, the trailer so many times. And it was, to me, it was almost as big as Star Wars, like in Episode 1 coming out the year before. Phantom Menace, happy 25th anniversary, by the way. This one is going to be 25 years old next year. Yeah. I have a feeling we're going to get we won't get an X-Men proper film. We're going to get a few more announcements later this summer at D23 Expo, possibly at Comic-Con. Regardless, this is, when this came out, in order to make this film and not have to spend all the money for all the major actors, they cast a bunch of television and stage actors. Primarily, mostly everybody knew who Patrick Stewart was from Star Trek Next Generation, Captain Picard. Ian McKellen mostly did stage, and same thing with even Hugh Jackman, yes. The only Oscar winner on the cast was Anna Paquin. She got it as a child for the piano. I believe that had already happened, yes. And I don't think Halle Berry had her Oscar yet. I could be completely wrong. But you're dealing with some decent heavyweights. And these are actors. They're not just like, I'm going to put on a costume and say some corny lines and then fly or zap people or punch them. You got a pretty stacked deck here. You get, character actor Bruce Davison as Senator Kelly. You get Ray Park, who the year before, came out of nowhere as Darth Maul, and yeah, he does a little bit of Darth Maul reference as Toad in this. You get Rebecca Romijn Stamos at the time, being Mystique, who also was the most visually interesting of all the characters that he kind of put even in front of Wolverine, who was the most popular character in the X-Men. If you look at the icon, the thumbnail for this thing, when you're looking at it, you'll notice that Mystique is very far forward than Wolverine or Patrick Stewart, or it drew the eyes of the audience they wanted to grab. It was like young adult men who already like the X-Men. Oh my gosh, there's a naked blue girl in the movie. Please, that's pretty much the purpose. You don't want to block any view of any of this. So yeah, she gets put in the front. We get who else? We got Tyler Mane in the professional wrestling realm, people who love him, and James Marsden, who had done a bunch of films and TV, but he was also I think he's a little bit of a song and dance guy. Famke Janssen was a Bond girl. So yeah, it's and she had done her share of TV and film over the years. But I imagine these people got paid pennies compared to what they hopefully got in later films when this thing finally blew up. But the biggest revelation for many people wasn't just the fact that we could see Wolverine on the big screen and the struggle of going, hey, you know what? We have a guy who stabs people. He has knives in his hands. How do we make this a PG-13 film where he doesn't just literally kill anybody he comes in contact with? Well, they worked that out. Just like they do with the cartoons, too. The cartoons have to be even more restricted. He has to fight robots a lot because they're not alive. And it's cool. That's why the Sentinels exist. But the biggest revelation, of course, is Hugh Jackman. And the fact to that is that even after he's retired, after making Logan easily possibly the best film in the entire X-Men milieu. As much as I love this and X2, not so much X3, as much as I love those films, Logan, it was a pinnacle for him to go out on. The fact that Ryan Reynolds brought him back for Deadpool and Wolverine later this summer, well, hey, that's just It makes it even harder for us to realize just how difficult it is to see Wolverine as somebody other than Hugh Jackman. And it took an actor who is mainly known for stage, song and dance. He's a song and dance man. He's the greatest showman. It's a man who we only made, since then, but he's an Australian song and dance man. He's a guy who now stabs people with his claws. Yeah. We get this actor that literally just everybody loves. I just can't. Yeah, everybody loves because of this movie, and it's really difficult to think about how he almost didn't have the role because Doug Ray Scott had the role up until weeks before this movie started filming, but he got pulled away to do Mission Impossible as the bad guy in that film. This would have been a totally different world, a different reality in the multiverse if Hugh Jackman never got discovered through this film. Think about that. We'd probably still love Doug Ray Scott, but we'd be missing Hugh Jackman. Beyond thematically, when it comes to this film, it's on point. Even more so, I realized watching it after so many years of not seeing it, it hits hard because the whole point of the X-Men has always been kind of a metaphor for the civil rights movement in the 60s when Jack Kirby and Stan Lee created the X-Men. Civil rights movement. It's the Professor X the Professor X MLK versus the Magneto Malcolm X. Those allegories, metaphors were apparent, but it's also very much, even in a time when it couldn't clearly be said, it's become a very strong connection to the LGBT community. People who are hated and feared because they are different. And you see from almost the beginning of the film when Jean Grey is addressing Congress or senators and things like just people in power. Man, I've been doing this for a while. When she's addressing these people, they state some things that we see current politicians saying about LGBTQ. It's a little bit scary at how it's not like these fears, this hatred is brand new. It's been existing for decades, centuries. But when it comes to legislating people's lives and freedoms, do we register people? Do we have control over their bodies? Do we shut them down, keep them from having powers? These are all questions that have been examined in the comic books for years. And of course, they touch on it a little bit in this first film. They try not to get too heavy on certain things, but the references are there. It's very clear. Senator Kelly is at the forefront, as he was in God Loves, Man Kills, the sort of larger format trade paperback from the 80s, which honestly I highly recommend if you want to understand the true spirit of the X-Men. And it's a little less... It's a bit more rated R. Kitty Pryde even drops an N-bomb. That's how it's not like the normal comics, let's just say. It's... yeah. She's not doing it to be, cruel or hurtful, but it's... yeah. She's making a point to somebody who's like, why are you making such a big deal about all of this controversy? How people are treating you? She snaps back. So honestly, it's there's so much history behind these characters, the concepts, and everything else. I mean, real history and also comic book history. So much behind these characters and the world they live in and inhabit. It was really important to nail that balance. And yeah, while the big plan for Magneto is fairly cliche, it's been done a few times, and since even in Amazing Spider-Man, when the lizard wants to turn everybody into lizards, Magneto has a reason to get rid of that bigotry against mutants by making everybody else mutants. It's 24 years old, so I think I can spoil that for you. Just saying. Uh, and he's decides to turn the world leaders who are gathering at Ellis Island into mutants. And by the way, he does this from the Statue of Liberty, which they really just mess up pretty badly. And sadly, you just get also a view of the Twin Towers in the distance from, not too far in the distance, but really close by in a lot of these shots. So you can tell it's of a certain time. And Marvel, now, since they own 20th Century Fox, through the existence of Deadpool and Wolverine later this summer, and so many other little things, are slowly rolling the concepts of the X-Men into the current Marvel Cinematic Universe. Or, eventually. They got to do it right. While not erasing what all this was, but it's going to be a different X-Men. It's going to be different. And it's all right, because this X-Men, while it has its problems, is excellent. For me, it's great fun. It's nostalgic fun. One of my favorite all-time superhero fight scenes is at the train station, where everybody kind of gets their powers on display a little bit, and there are real stakes. I want to say, there's a real intensity. There's a fear. There's not just, I'm going to get you, like kind of superhero shenanigans here. Like, it's, when Sabretooth attacks Storm, he's a scary guy. He grabs her by the neck and slams her up against the glass, breaking it. That's a concussion. And that's not a super heroic or normal super villainous act where they just shoot laser beams or, whatever, fly around and punch each other into buildings. That was a little bit terrifying. And realizing that the big twist comes when they think that Wolverine is who Magneto's after. But no, it's Rogue. And it's this fear of this doing everything they can to protect this child. And she's afraid as it is. And even Wolverine can't protect her in that moment. And you see the standoff between Charles and Magneto with the police in the middle. There's a whole lot to be said there. Yeah, especially with recent history and everything else. There's all sorts of just... It's heavy. It's thick with potential. Whether the new era of X-Men will live up to that and take it a step further, and also more fully, I think, lean into some of the more LGBTQ themes of people being different. It's Senator Kelly's confession to Jean that he... wondering, he understands now just what they were going through. And he also asked Storm if she hates normal people. And her answer is yes, sometimes. But why is not because, they're going to replace us, or I'm fearful because I feel inferior. No, she hates people. She says she sometimes hates people because she's afraid. And that is the root of all prejudice, all hatred, all fear is at the heart of all of it. And that's what drives people to step on the lives, the rights, the freedoms, the humanity of others. And that's what the X-Men is all about combating. So, yeah, I see a world, hopefully, with X-Men, not just great superhero fights zip-zapping everywhere. And they've done pretty well with the First Class era of X-Men films here and there. We've talked about a number of them. Some were great, some not so great. Same thing with this era of X-Men films. The next era of X-Men films is going to probably be a bit more informed, a bit more open, and a bit more broad. There's no fear in making the next few X-Men films. Well, I shouldn't say there's no fear, but there's not the fear that, you know what, we don't know how this is going to play with audiences in live action. Do we gotta make sure that everybody wears leather because nobody's gonna take anybody seriously if Wolverine dresses up in a yellow and blue suit? no, it's okay now. They're not worried about the mass audience. I think what they need to worry about is just making sure the spirit and the content and the heroes and villains are as they were in the comics. To a certain degree. Again, Magneto is not so much a villain. You see him in the very first scene of the film as a child in the Holocaust, being separated from his parents and his powers suddenly presenting himself as he bends the gates at Auschwitz. I think it was Auschwitz. Trying to, as he's being pulled away from his parents, not even understanding that he's doing it. But you see, when he's finally knocked out, the gates are bent. Everybody's confused, but the gates are bent in a somewhat of an X. So it's a nice, neat little reference. But yeah, there's so many neat little Easter eggs and references when it comes to the comics in this. There's even a Star Wars reference with Ray Park. Did I say that already? I feel that I said that already. Ray Park plays Toad. He makes a Darth Maul reference in one of the scenes. You'll know when you see it. Happy 25th. Happy 25th Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I might have said that already. I'm really out of it. So anyway, I highly recommend, in preparation for everything that's to come, sit down and do a marathon of as many X-Men films as you can handle. Again, not all of them are great, but this one stands up a whole lot better than most, and it's got a fantastic cast. Robert Kamen does the soundtrack. Great score. They eventually will replace the style of Sabretooth eventually. The actors might get a little bit too comfortable in their roles eventually, or you move away from them altogether because they don't need to be this big superhero anymore. I don't know, but I just think there's a reason why this is one of the most iconic superhero films in history. And it's kind of amazing that Disney now owns it. Keep building out this universe, putting it all together without having to do crazy extra negotiations to get Wolverine into a Marvel film next to Iron Man, or who's, it'll happen. Captain America and Thor and everybody else. So yeah, it's gonna happen. Time will tell. I'm gonna tell you, Secret Wars is coming. So the multiverse is going to come crashing down on our heads, and the only thing that can beat Endgame is going to be Secret Wars if they do it right. Even if it's just like completely empty storytelling, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that guy's standing next to that gal, next to that guy, and there's now like 900 superheroes standing in the same shot, played by the actors who always played them. Just saying, or get ready for that. Spoilers. Let's pick tomorrow's episode. 1:15. Yeah, it's if you have an understanding of just what went into this film, and I could talk for days. Honestly, it's probably good that I am not for you, but I say definitely it's time to revisit this. If you don't do it on the 25th anniversary next year, you should do it now. Be ready. Tomorrow's episode, it's a music performance. It's a concert film, I believe, by Miss Elsa herself, Idina Menzel. This is Idina Menzel, Which Way to the Stage? Most people know her from, obviously, Frozen at Disney, but she was also the first actress on stage to perform the Wicked Witch in Wicked. So yeah, that's I have a feeling we're going to see songs from both of those at some point, along with a bunch of other things. So yeah, it's a concert film. Idina Menzel, Which Way to the Stage, on the next Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Excelsior.